Marshall of the Marshall Racing Project 33 is my son. And Marshall was a dreamer, had a big, big dream to one day have a motorcycle. At the age of 20, he was late, which was very uncommon of Marshall, to his birthday party, and he surprised us with this motorcycle.
Yeah, give it a rev. Oh, yeah.
But what concerned me most about this was he had been suicidal, and he had been very depressed. And my initial thought was, so this is how you're going to do it. And I was very scared for him. And I wasn't very supportive in the very beginning. But he called me one day shortly after, and he said, "Mom, things are really looking up. Things are really, really taking a turn, and I'm really excited. I want you to know this." I mean, and he just sounded better than he had sounded in years. When Marshall was 14, me, my 4 children, and I fled abuse. And he was the youngest of 4. And it was very devastating. It was a marriage of 21 years and their father. And so it was leaving with 4 teenagers and not really knowing how we were going to make it. It was very traumatic for Marshall, and he was at a very raw age. Dreams are really risky because when it's your really biggest dream, if you feel like you have failed at your dream, it can feel devastating. The dream has its own life cycle. It has first the dream, then there's always the crash of the dream, and usually that's multiple crashes, and then there is the rebirth of a dream. And the dream realized never looks like the dream initially imagined. Well, he hadn't had it a whole month when I got another phone call. And he said, "Mom, I'm okay, but I've just had a motorcycle accident and I'm about to go into surgery." And I said, "Is there a nurse around?" And a frantic woman answers the phone. I said, "Ma'am, is this a matter of life and death?" And she said, "Marshall, do you have any final words for your mother?" And he said, "Mom, I love you and I appreciate you, click."
My name is Ever Gomez, and Marshall was my patient, number 1, and then my angel, number 2. I met Marshall at the hospital after a very, very bad motorcycle accident.
He was John Doe for a while. There were 2 John Does, and both were in critical condition, and we eventually found that Marshall just barely survived, and it was a miracle.
Well, I discovered that he was basically putting up a barrier, a wall, that behind the closed door, he was actually in pain, that he was actually suffering, and that he just didn't want to project that to anyone else.
One day, Ever brought us a gift. He brought him a back scratcher. It was just this act of kindness that was unasked for and certainly not expected. He told me that he would offer to help Marshall with his motorcycle, either refurbish it or sell it for parts. And Marshall kept in touch with this man. Well, fast forward, we get out of the hospital, and because Marshall was such a miracle, the hospital asked that he would go and speak on behalf of Trauma Units of Texas, and he did, to the state legislature. He was the youngest one there. He was kind of like the grand finale after all the medical professionals pleaded their case, and Marshall helped Trauma Units of Texas secure funding from the state legislature.
I was there for a reason, and there's a reason why everyone's doing what they're doing, and we're all here for a purpose, and I find this to be amazing that I'm able to come here to speak to y'all, just to tell you a little thing that I can do. I'm a nobody, but I'll give you the best I can, and any little thing that I can do to help y'all out is incredible, because we don't know who's next or what's going to happen to anyone else's family.
And it was shortly after that Marshall just started really declining. And At first it was, Mom, I just don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be here, and I need you to understand, and I need you to let me go. And I'd be like, no, Marshall, I'm not going to let you go. We're going to find answers. We're going to do this. You need to try that. And he would try. He would try everything I asked him to do. And toward the very, very end, when he was really getting down, he started to not want me to call him anymore, and he didn't want to call me. And he wasn't answering my text messages. And I said, Marshall, we need to get you professional help. And he said, no, I'm not willing to do that. I do not want the stigma, Mom. I decided to go to a ladies' event. It was an inaugural event at the Fort Worth Club. And I just wanted to be around some women for some support. And so they unveiled this logo. And I said to the woman, I need a logo done, and I love this logo. And there was one man there, and he was the creator of this logo. And so she said, I'll introduce you to him. He's my husband. So I met Barry, and Barry said, what are you looking for a logo for? And I said, well, I speak, and I've written a book about fleeing domestic violence. And he said, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I recently did research to see how much it would take to kill a man, and I took enough to kill 4, and I'm a miracle. I said, I'll tell you why you're telling me this. I'll tell you why. My son is home suicidal. Will you go talk to him? And he said, tonight? And I said, yes, go tonight. And he said, but it's after 9 o'clock. And I said, yes. And he said, are you going to tell him that I'm coming? And I said, no, I'm not. And he may not let you in, but would you please try? Here's the code to his gate, to his apartment, and just go knock on his door.
When God enters into our lives and we allow him to help us, it's a beautiful thing. It wasn't just coincident.
Well, 2 hours later, he called me and he said, you know, you've really raised a really fine young man. I mean, we talked, and he's really in crisis. And one of his concerns was he doesn't really know what he believes about God. And he said, you know what I told him? I said, son, you're a miracle. You shouldn't be here. I'm a miracle. I shouldn't be here. You just opened the door to a strange black man, and we're sitting here on the couch talking about God. He said, son, God sent me. What more do you need? That was the last face-to-face conversation my son ever had. So losing a 21-year-old son was just devastating for our family, to say the least. And I wasn't really sure I was going to pull out of it. The next time I saw Barry was at his viewing. And through this crowded room, I saw Barry come. And it was in October, it was cold outside, and he was just sweating. And he came up to me and he said, I failed. And I said, oh no, you didn't, Barry. You want to know what you did? If not for you, this mother would be shaking her fist at God saying, why didn't you do something on behalf of my son? I was hanging on a thin thread of faith, but for Barry. And because Barry was willing to go see my son and talk to him, there was no denying that God intervened on behalf of my son. And it gave me hope, and it gave me something to hold on to.
I feel cheated, but I also feel blessed that I know I will see Marshall again.
I am Marshall's oldest sister. You do connect with other people that have had that same loss, and that's kind of what Marshall is to me now. He was my brother that was always trying new things, getting into trouble, wasn't afraid of anything, and now he is an area that helps me grow. I feel almost more human with that loss. We weren't allowed to cry. We weren't allowed to show that weakness. And he just unfortunately bore the brunt of that for much longer than I did as the oldest, as the youngest. He had that so much more in his life. And I think that did impact his ability or his openness to receiving that sort of help. So I think the more that we can do to open up a safe conversation and provide a community for people that don't feel that they have one, I think that's important. I felt like I didn't have a community for a very long time. I didn't have my people. my siblings were my people, and that's one reason losing Marshall was so hard, because that's my community. But I think the MRP project, this book, any other things that we do around this are just really going to help bring this to light, create more of a community, and hopefully bring hope to people.
Losing a brother to suicide, I never would have thought I would have a community like it. Whenever it happened, I just felt so alone, and it felt like there was no way I'd not feel alone. I just almost accepted that it would be forever. Yes, I've definitely felt suicidal myself. My brother and I would talk quite a bit in the end about it, just because, I mean, we were in a really confusing situation that we didn't understand which way was up. We didn't understand what was happening, what we were feeling, and we were really lost. And yeah, we talked a lot. We talked a lot about suicide. We talked a lot about just wanting to end it all. And usually it would come to the point where we would say we couldn't leave just because we have our mom, we have our sisters. It would be unbearably painful to lose one of them, especially without warning. And we would usually come to the consensus that we were staying for them. Having the community from, not only from Marshall Racing Project, but from just all walks of life, just from the natural causes of meeting random people and talking about loss, talking about pain, you find a community in it, and I thought that was something I would not find. Yeah, that community was surprisingly welcoming and nurturing. It's a special thing because it does make you feel alone. Lessons I've learned from the project and from just the experience of it all. Definitely, for one, being open is more helpful than not.
My name is Victoria Foster. Marshall was my baby brother. I mean, we were thick as thieves, 2 peas in a pod, always had each other's backs, always playing cowboys and Indians and covering each other in mud as war paint, and going on adventures on our property when we were really young. Once we kind of escaped from the past in that whole city and everything that we were tied to there, gradually worked on ourselves, and made progress in that regard of figuring out our feelings and understanding everything that we had gone through and how they were affecting us, and over time grew closer. Losing my brother to suicide was very hard. When we were younger, all of our siblings, when we had escaped our past and gone to a new city where we were starting over, we all had kind of a heart-to-heart, if you will, and agreed that, you know, it was us against the world. We were gonna always have each other's backs. No one was gonna give up. No one was gonna leave, and more or less made a pact to stick with it, no matter how hard things got or dark times got. And so finding out that he had given up and broken that pact was heart-wrenching. It was really difficult. Losing him was very hard, and definitely went to a dark spot in life. And it didn't help that my other brother was also going into that dark spot. So I just kind of felt like it was a time of tape and glue, and just kind of doing what you could to hold yourself together and to get by until things finally started getting easier. Obviously that pain never is going to go away, and obviously he'll never be forgotten, but it does make the dark times a little darker, just because one of us did give up, and I hope no one does in the future, just because I don't think any of us would recover from it or be able to bounce back. But I'd like to imagine that everyone that's still here is stronger for it, and hopefully can find better footing and more confidence than he had. In regards to the motorcycle, I know Ever enjoys it. He's such a sweet guy for going above and beyond, not only just for our family and for everything that the MRP 33 stands for, but he's really taking it on as his own. And I love to see that, because it's not something that I would have it in me to do at this time. So I love that somebody's kind of carrying that torch for him right now. Kindness from Ever it's great to see. Unfortunately, in our past, or at least in mine specifically, in Marshall's, we did not get a lot of kindness in home life or schools, a lot of bullying situations, even sports. Almost everywhere that we were, home, school, church, there was a twisted kind of kindness that we had come accustomed to and didn't know that there was a healthier version. So for Everett to be so invested in his life, that was a big deal for me. And I love that Marshall got a little bit more of that proper and correct male love that he was definitely not shown in younger years. Ever, I hope that he continues doing this further and further.
After the loss of Marshall, I had taken care of all of his belongings except for one thing, his prized possession, his wrecked motorcycle. And I was going through Marshall's text messages in his phone, just anything to feel close to him. And I found these text messages that he had with Ever Gomez. And I was like, that's that nurse. I texted Ever and I asked if he could use the motorcycle for parts. And he said, sure, he'd take the motorcycle. And I said, I'll just give it to you.
The more I got to talk to the family, the more I realized that I had to do something with a bike that had meaning, that will convey a message of hope in the future. The Marshall Racing Project 33, it has been the whole time a movement based on helping others, on how to talk about the difficult topics about depression and suicide. It has been driven by individuals that have collaborated, basically given their time for free. They have given funding. They have just come out and said, hey, how can we help to help other people?
He'll be able to take that bike all over the world, wherever he wants, and kids will be able to feel Marshall and look at that.